everyone, I'm Ashley with Atlassian, and I am thrilled today to welcome Guy Podjarny, the president and founder of Snyk. And we're going to talk a little bit about some security issues in the industry and how we can go about solving those. So Guy, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So first off, what does Snyk do?
Snyk is a developer-focused security company, and we focus on helping fix vulnerabilities in open source dependencies and containers that you're using in your application.
Awesome. So one of the things that, obviously we're talking via video and is now a huge thing with remote and distributed workforces. And as people are pulling in more libraries, more open source content, how do you go about securing all of that? Like, how do you make sure that you're securing the entire workforce when people aren't actually just sitting in a room on the same network using, the approved stack? We've got shadow IT happening, right? How do you secure all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard problem, right? You sort of have to start by acknowledging that, especially if you weren't in that mode before, this is a big change. What you really need to invest in is empowerment and visibility. Those are really the two bits. First, let's talk about empowerment. So when you talk about a distributed workforce, people kind of work on their own schedule. They might have some kids kind of running around. They might, some of them might actually, be affected by the virus. And but either way, when people are working from home, there's less continuity. People don't necessarily work together, and their communication is not as big. So doing things that are disruptive to the team, like breaking a build or convening everybody to meet at the same time to do a review, is just harder than it typically is. Yep. So what you really want to do is you want to invest in empowering those individual developers and the teams themselves to make decisions on their own. And that means, there's complexity to it that we can dig into, but it means, educating them and equipping them with the right tools to do so. And then if that's what they are doing, as a security person, you do need to know that the systems are secure. Right. And so that's really where the visibility piece kicks in, and you have to invest in ensuring that you're automating visibility, that you are capturing what has happened from the tools, where the code changes, where the builds are happening, because really, even more than ever before, you can't rely on side conversations, on meetings, on reviews to know what's going on and be in the information flow.
Yeah. I do want to dig in a little bit about, that piece around empowering the developers, because yes, there's a ton of tools that can automate the visibility, that can help on the security side and the visibility side. But what are those behaviors and mindsets that you need to be instilling, not just with your developers, but with the company as a whole? Because, I assume this affects product managers. I assume that this affects, the go-to-market message. What are marketers saying? How are they building trust with customers? So what are the mindsets and behaviors that affect this in addition to the tools that are provided?
Yeah, for sure. So the security team definitely needs to sort of adapt, as well as the other teams accepting that responsibility. It starts from educating people on what good looks like, and it sounds trivial, but it actually isn't. Oftentimes, the people involved, whether a product manager or a receptionist or a software engineer, they don't necessarily know what's right and what's wrong, but don't phrase that as a policy, but rather as guidelines. Yeah. And then, so really a lot of it is around maybe documenting and writing down and doing some educational sessions about what good looks like. And then within that, you have to separate out your hard lines from your soft lines. It might be that, if you're trying to push some GPL code, right, and that's a hard line, or some very critical vulnerability, stop the presses, nothing can go through, you're not empowered to make that decision. That's a hard decision that you cannot pass. And then most of our world isn't black and white, it's gray. And so, for these other areas, give people the guidance on when should they make a decision. Hopefully, increasingly over time, you educate them. You're not going to turn them into full experts. And when should they pull you in? Yeah. And really, what you want is to again empower them to also make that decision. And then the third and maybe a little bit fourth bit is, when you do those types of sort of educations and empowerment, you can't just focus on the negative. You have to celebrate successes. Yeah. So you have to, we talked before about investing in visibility. You have to also find the cases where somebody did well and celebrate that. Give them a virtual pat on the back, celebrate them as much as you can, because at the end of the day, if you're just the naysayer and, the sort of the enforcement police, people are not really going to want to engage, and you're getting to the opposite place. So if you've succeeded in all of those, underlying all of them, to sort of make this simple, is really a series of tooling. So you have to think about how do you consistently show them what's right and what's wrong. How do you sort of separate and embed into your sort of, build pipelines, into your software development process, into your sort of, product processes, the hard lines and the soft lines and the decisions. And then how do you celebrate? How do you showcase the problems, of course, but, more uniquely where successes lie?
I love that. I think one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit was one of the common pitfalls that companies fall into, and kind of if there's any obvious quick wins. And I feel like celebrating the successes, that's super easy. It doesn't cost you anything. It makes your life better. The security team is genuinely happy whenever, we every so often in past companies I've seen where people, we have a red team and a blue team, and the red team is actually really excited when the blue team thwarts them, because it means that the security checks are working. And so I think that's one of the easiest quick wins, is just to start celebrating the successes when people do things right. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be as simple as a Slack message or a broad email. It can be stickers. A lot of teams actually sort of have some security hero stickers or some dedicated swag, just like a t-shirt that says, I made the world more secure today, or something to that effect. And they can go all the way to things, like maybe right now a voucher for a restaurant doesn't quite fly, maybe
exactly
something in, but it doesn't have to be monetary. It's about recognition that works well. And look, if you do it well, then more people will do it, and you can raise the bar, but more importantly, you'll be more secure.
Yeah. Are there any other pitfalls that might have kind of a quick win similar to celebrating the successes that people could start implementing or looking for right after they watch this video?
For sure. So one of the key things is not trying to boil the ocean. I mean, I think security, just like anything else, benefits from iterations. Yep. So there's a tendency sometimes for organizations to be perfectionist and to think, hey, I have this security threat, I'm going to model all the problems with it, and I'm trying to put a system that tackles all the problems. Yeah. And that's just really, really hard to do. So find the low-hanging fruit, right? Find something that elegantly feeds into your sort of development processes and start from there, right? Find things that might have, an easier remediation or easier definition of that sort of hard line and soft line, right? And pull those in. I'm a fan of sort of open source libraries and those were fixing known vulnerabilities as an example of a high ROI environment, but really kind of pick your own environment. And then the other kind of nice tip is to trying to find all the issues in the pipeline. When you take a page out of the world of DevOps, what we've learned is that you can actually find a lot of issues after they've been deployed. And it's not the end of the world. If you've shipped a vulnerability, odds are that in the next sort of 24 hours, nobody would hack into it. It's not, this is clearly like a statement that has exceptions. Right. But if you're really, really good at finding out that a problem happened as soon as it got deployed, and you're good at responding to that quickly, then that's practically as good as breaking the build and not letting it go through in the first place, but far less disruptive. So I would sort of say those two tips, if you manage to sort of look for the low-hanging fruits and to understand what is it that you can find out right after it's been deployed versus getting in the way, you'll achieve some good results, all of that predicated on that visibility.
Yeah. Well, I love that. That mentality of progress over perfection is going to help you get better each time with your tools, with, the people and the practices, and then also with, shipping code that doesn't have any vulnerabilities. So thank you so much for sharing about kind of some general security best practices. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to check out sneak.io. Thanks so much, Guy.
Thank you.